This is The Extensionists, Conversations with Great Thinkers in Agriculture. I'm Toban Dyck.
And I'm Jay Whetter. Hey, Toban.
Jay.
So our guest today is a guy named Mark Campbell. He's from the UK. And I'm going to tell you how we connected with Mark.
Yeah. I'm curious too. It's
kind of a roundabout
across the pond
way.
and like a. Yeah.
So I went to. I've said this before, so people are probably tired of hearing it. But so I went to Cornwall, England, home of the Whetters, in April of 2024, and I tried to find a farm journalist from Cornwall who I could connect with while I was there, and so I found this woman, Ruth Wills, Wills. And Ruth does some writing for Farmers Weekly, which is one of the big farm papers in the UK. And she does other stuff as well. So I found her, maybe through LinkedIn, maybe through social media, I can't remember, but we connected. And I said, hey, Ruth, I'm coming to Cornwall these dates. It'd be great to meet you. And also, could you find me a farmer to go visit? And she wasn't available at the dates that I was there. But she did find me a farmer named Jeremy Odie, who I did an article with in the Country Guide.
I feel like you've, yeah. That name sounds familiar.
Jeremy, it's a great farm, and so I recommend trying to find my article on Country Guide about Jeremy Odie.
Oh, you do.
Oat. It's oat with an EY on the end. So OATEY. So then. So I started following Ruth on LinkedIn. And so Ruth made this post about how much fun she had at this AgriLeaders event. And AgriLeaders, that's interesting. So I sent her a note and I said, well, can you tell me more about this? And so she did. And then she said, you should talk to Mark Campbell, who basically organizes it. So I sent Mark Campbell a note, and we actually had a conversation, good old phone conversation, a couple months ago, and then I made a mental note that he might be a good guest for our podcast. So that's how we connected with Mark across the pond.
Yeah, connections happen in just the most bizarre ways. That's super interesting.
That sounded so sincere.
Oh yeah, tell us more about that. And then you emailed him, and then he responded saying yes, and then you. Yes. I'm joking. No, that sounds, and I'm being sincere. You know, these things happen, and in strange ways. I'm looking forward to that. But like from the notes, it's just I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of like training, it seems like he's got a lot of experience with that, and extension and all these things. I think there's lots we're gonna glean from it. I hope anyway.
Yeah, we'll see.
Excited. Are you curious about what Jay and I get up to behind the scenes at The Extensionists?
The Extensionist has a newsletter. We'd love you to subscribe. We give you exclusive content, some behind the scenes,
and important updates. You're never going to miss an episode again.
Please sign up at theextensionist.com. All right, our guest today is Mark Campbell, who's the Knowledge Exchange Manager with the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Mark.
Great to be on the podcast.
This is going to meander all over the place, Mark. This is the way
it always
this
does.
Is the way Toban and I like to roll. But so AHDB always makes us think, or me anyway, of ADHD.
Yeah, when I'm reading my notes here, it's all I'm seeing.
You're definitely not the first people to say that.
Yeah. So Mark is with ADHD and AHDB in the UK, which agriculture agency that represents farmers who grow cereals, oilseeds, beef, cattle, and sheep.
Yeah, and dairy and pigs as well for good measure.
Sure, let's just round it all out. Yeah, dairy. So dairy, pigs, sheep, cattle, which is most of the, I guess not chickens, but. And then, like you said, the cereals and the oilseeds. So you're covering a broad swath of the English countryside, or I should say the UK countryside.
Yeah, a fair chunk of the UK countryside, and we won't get into the devolved pieces because it's different in all the four countries.
So what we want to talk about mostly is the AgriLeaders. but I really am quite curious about so you said you like watching football and soccer and also rugby union. And I don't know much about rugby. I've never played a game of rugby or a game of football for that matter.
Okay.
But who is your team?
You haven't played football?
No, I've played like Canadian football.
But you haven't played a game of soccer?
Well, I've kicked a soccer ball around.
Okay.
But I've never actually played a game. So except maybe from grade 8 gym class or something.
Okay. Sorry, Mark.
No, that's all good. It's all good. And soccer. I'm a big sports fan. I enjoy my sport. My family and my children play a lot of sport. So my team would be Brighton and Hove Albion if we're talking soccer.
Oh yeah, and they're doing okay.
They're doing really, really. They're the underdog in the Premier League, and taken on by a chap called Tony Bloom, who bought the club about 15, 20 years ago as they were about to go bust, and has taken it from nothing to probably the business in the it is the looked on business in the Premier League of making money and success.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they look at bringing new young talent in, growing them, and then pushing them on into bigger, better clubs around the world. Soccer. I like to watch Brighton, and so do both of my sons. We pop down there occasionally, but I'm probably more of a rugby fan. I enjoy my rugby union. So I follow a team called Harlequins that are based in southeast London, very close to the home of rugby, which is Twickenham, the Allianz Stadium, and the RFU. Which I also match day volunteer for England at the RFU and help prepare the pitch and learn how to grow grass for a very, very different purpose.
That's amazing. Right, so you're extending your agricultural talents to growing grass for the rugby union stadium.
Yeah, kind of like it's very indirectly. I fell into that. It's what my son wants to do. He's in his final year of what we'd call secondary school in the UK. So he's taken his exams in a few weeks before he fledges off to college, and he wants to be a groundsman. He wants to grow grass for elite sport level, and he volunteers there and does one day a week. Currently, with the grounds team looking after the Hallow turf, and they got stuck for a person on a mower back whilst England were playing New Zealand in the autumn, and James phoned and said, "Dad, what are you doing tomorrow?" And I ended up going and helping, and the rest is history. So it's a really good way of watching my favourite sport, supporting my son, and learning about grass growing in a very, very different context.
Yeah, exactly. Did you say hallowed ground?
The Hallow ground is the Hallow turf of rugby.
Yeah.
It's the birthplace of rugby union.
Love it.
That's super interesting. So back like years ago, Mark, we don't know each other, but so I currently farm in southern Manitoba in Canada. I'm a grain farmer here. You're talking to us. I'm at my farm studio here, and but for years I wrote a agriculture column for a national paper in Canada, and I would get a lot of engagement from people who grew turf for golf. When I wrote that column, so that it's interesting, right? There's that cross section, and that it's come up a lot actually. Even still, sometimes on social media, people who are grounds crew for golf courses or for various pitches engage in the ag sector in ways that I actually initially found quite surprising. But there is a strong connection there. That's interesting. You brought it up.
There's a massive synergy, and it just looking at the different sports turfs in terms of what they're aiming to achieve. So rugby, for example, where you're scrummaging, it's all about traction and safety, whereas if you're looking at soccer, it's all about how quick the ball can travel across the surface and stuff like that. And it's open. It's something I never ever thought I'd get into other than watching the game. And where my son's interested, it's just there's loads of synergies and loads of interest in terms of.
So is there any way? Like, do those synergies actually happen? Like, I'm just thinking of like that quick recovery that you would need with a sports stadium. You need that grass to be perfect every week, and it's probably after a rugby game in particular where you've got those heavy scrums and the shredding of the grass surface. I was wondering if there would be synergies or lessons for livestock pasture land for quick recovery.
Yeah, definitely. And some other stuff and the probiotics and the non-agrochemical kind of treatments that they're putting onto the grass to try and do that. They're spraying molasses and silica and all kinds of products, which is like, what's that for? It's basically it's Red Bull for grass to get it that boost to push it forward. But there could be a huge amount of learning. Likewise, vice versa. I stick my ag head on in terms of, well, globally we're trying to reduce inputs are very expensive. We're trying to be more environmentally friendly in terms of our practices. You look at sports turf and sports grounds, they just chuck N around like it's nobody's business. There could be a lot of learnings from how they can capture nutrients when they're changing pitches and regenerating their surfaces. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm quite surprised how interested I've got in it. So yeah.
Well, I can see. I mean, I've never even talked about that before, but I can think we could do a whole podcast on that.
Like, I wonder if is it a bit of an accelerated snapshot of like research and development, where if it's for soccer or if it's for football, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like the regulatory environment's totally different. If you want to try out these genetics, this breeding program to get this done, there's like this. You can do it there. It's a little incubator for like fast research.
Yeah, massively, and there's so different dynamics. If you look in the soccer world, that we've been grateful enough that we're in good contact with the head of grounds there. Soccer, particularly, if you look across the UK, where they're not only playing in the Premier League, there's the Champions League. Some of these pitches are facing 3, 4, 5 matches a week that they need to look immaculate and perfect, and how they can actually manipulate the plant growth to be able to sustain that is phenomenal.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I could just continue to talk about this.
Should we move on to Mark's origin story? So we always get some notes ahead of time, Mark, and I know you said you didn't grow up on a farm, but here you are now as a leader within agriculture in the UK, which is great. So we'll get there eventually. But what got you into agriculture was some love of cows, I think.
In our notes, it says actually obsession. So
with cows. So how did that come about at an early age? What was
I don't really know.
The obsession come
from? With cows would definitely what my mother would say. My only connection with agriculture in my family would be my grandmother. My mother's mother served in the Land Army in the wars, in World War I and World War II. That's my only direct connection with the industry. My father, my grandfather, they were all precision engineers. They and my two younger brothers both followed my father into those realms, but I always had this yearning. We had an auction market, a sale centre in the town that I lived in, and used to love it in the school holidays, because walking around to grandma and granddad's, we had to go past the cattle market, and little Mark would always like to go and have a look and nosy around, and I think it was those kind of things that I was just really intrigued about animals and what they did. Fast forward to as I entered my secondary stage of education, I met a lad there that lived on a farm. His parents didn't farm, they rented a cottage, and I ended up becoming a bit of a pest, because I was around there every weekend and every minute that would go with this. I was exposed to the world of agriculture, to the point that his parents said to me, "Mark, you're not coming up anymore." And at that point, the farm owner, we used to do little chores and errands for him, said, "There's the keys to the workshop, Mark. Come up whenever you like, and you can let yourself in." And that's kind of where my love and my entrance into the industry came.
Right on. So you were welcomed in, and you felt at home.
Yeah, definitely. And now, looking as my career has progressed into the worlds of education and now extension, we need more individuals to progress into the industry in that manner.
Yeah, and certainly when I'm reading these notes, I really like that how it seems like you've been able to kind of inject that into the program that you're involved in, that you're bringing people from outside of ag into ag. It's jumping ahead a little bit. We'll come back to the kind of the early stages, but I just want to get this out there while I'm thinking about it. Is I really like that. I think ag here, and I'm sure there too, it can get very insular and echo chamber. ish. And so I love the idea of bringing people from outside of ag into ag and letting people in ag know that a lot of their issues are shared in other industries and other sectors. And I think that just foments valuable perspective.
I think it's massively important, and I'm not hugely well travelled, but thinking of global agriculture, particularly in the Western world, there's more technology there. There's less people actually operating on farm because of the automation and things like that. So I think opening it out and looking further than just the field gate or the farm drive is really, really important, because what we've experienced, particularly with the program, is that whatever industry you tend to win, you tend to particularly, which AgriLeader focuses around the human element of managing a business, leadership management and people management. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. Most people are facing very, very similar challenges, but in a slightly different context.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So when you started your job with AHDB, yeah, was it an available opening, or were you looking for something in that field?
So prior to joining AHDB, I had an interesting career from practical agriculture, working in the veterinary sector, and then I moved into a position in education in a college, so a 16 to 19 level college, where I was there for nearly 10 years. And I finished, when I left, I was in charge of the ag and food division at that college, and I loved my years teaching, and I loved my years bringing new entrants into the industry, but I got very frustrated with the politics that went along with education in the UK, and had the yearning to get back in front of farmers. So one of my prior colleagues, Isaac Van Heerden, that you might see on some of the podcasts and some of the stuff that we do over here, we worked together in the college. He looked after the degree level programs, I looked after the what they call the A level programs, and he went to AHDB. He started the AgriLeader program, which was then called Dairy Leader, because it was mainly focused on dairy. And he was like, Mark, I think there's a bit of an opportunity here, could do with some of your skills, and the rest is history. And I was quite keen to get back towards farmers. I'd used a lot of the resources that AHDB provide across all the sectors, so I was aware of them, and just wanted to get back out on the road and up farm drives and in front of farmers again, rather than dealing with the bureaucracy and the politics of managing an agriculture department in an agriculture university.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should get into AgriLeaders, but I just wanted to go back to a couple of quick little things. This is way back to early on. You said your grandmother was part of the land army, and I know I'm 20 minutes late on touching back. So
I wrote it down too, because I'm like, this is a follow up.
What was the land army?
So back in World War One and World War Two, when generally all the men went off to fight on the front line, the land army were the women and wives that were left behind, and they were assigned to manage the land and produce food for the country. We're in periods of rationing and all sorts of challenge. So my grandmother was deployed on a farm that was about 4 or 5 miles out of the town that she lived in. The farm's still there today, and she worked with dairy cows. She was a milkmaid, and milked cows through the war period. That was what she was assigned to do. So yeah, essentially they were the people that were feeding the country whilst everyone, all the men were out on the front line fighting the war.
Oh, I love it. Land army.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then the other thing was just so the college where you taught and you also went to as a student was Plumpton
College.
Yeah. What's it like?
It's a fantastic institution. I still live in the area now. It's only 3 miles from. I haven't ventured very, very far from home. I live just outside of the town I was born, and Plumpton's 4 or 5 miles away from where I lived. And it's a fantastic place. It's a very, very unique institution in the UK. That it's independent. A lot of the bigger institutions now have partnered and collaborated with other institutions, and agriculture and land base is the core to their delivery. And over the periods that I was there, we saw several £1 million worth of investment, not only into the farm, the infrastructure and the teaching facility, but also into conferencing facilities and community facilities as well, to help service the southeast, the southern agricultural communities, which is fantastic. So yeah, still a great place that's very, very close to my heart and has some good fond memories there.
Right on. Toban, do you have any other questions on that before we go to AgriLeaders?
No.
Yeah.
Like the college?
Just anything.
I mean, I have tons more questions.
Yeah. So you kick us off on what you got there.
Jay just going on how excited I was to talk about this before we were, because I think it's really interesting and really kind of apropos. Jay and I are actually kind of we're full disclosure, we're kind of looking at developing a little bit of what sounds like a similar program here in Manitoba with something, with plans for Western Canada domination, but we really like some of the elements from these notes from your program. There's a similar need here for that kind of leadership training in for farmers in ag. One of the kind of questions that's on my mind right now is, do you at all focus on so you develop current leaders or current farm managers? Is there an angle where you're trying to find new ones as well? Like tease out one of the issues that, say, just just to round that out a bit, is we know that there's lots of farmers in Manitoba or in Canada who are potential leaders, but who aren't out there in the public. So we don't know who they are. Is there an effort to kind of tease those people out?
Yes and no. I suppose the sole aim of the program is to be that enabler. If you're a better leader and manager, then hopefully you're going to overcome the multitude of challenges that's facing the industry as we move forward. And we'll always say that everybody leads and manages on a day-to-day basis. So whether you're the new grad out of college, or whether you're 62 years old and the third generation in the business, everyone leads and manages at a different level. What we're trying to do is these skill sets within UK agriculture, probably in global agriculture, are not deemed as important or sexy, because the industry is generally deemed as more of a way of life than actually a professional career, which is a very professional career. That we're trying to instill those skills at all levels to help push the industry beyond. And if I'm really honest, and this is no disrespect to my UK farmers or any farmers, it's not really a sexy subject. It's not something farmers in the UK like cows and ploughs and soil, when it's like, I've got to manage a person and I've got to understand their personality profile or something like that. It's like, oh, I'm just going to hook the plough on and get back out into the paddock and carry on doing what I'm doing. We're trying to enable and bring these skills in very unique ways, and different ways, to enable farmers to be better farmers.
And I was going to ask you, what are the skills required? And I know, so you just mentioned human resource management. What are the targeted skills to build those leaders?
So if we go back a couple of steps, where this program was actually born, I've been with AHDB now for 7 years, Isaac for 12, so probably 12, 14 years ago, we were challenged by a group of what we'd deem in the UK as very large, very progressive dairy farmers. And they challenged us basically in terms of the levy that they were paying, us the tax that they were paying, so we're not seeing any return on that investment. Said in terms of animal husbandry, animal management, in terms of grass and soil management, in terms of business management, we're good at that. We're very, very good, profitable farmers. What can you provide us for that return? So rather than burying our heads in the sand, we actually brought them all together in a room and then started to ask some questions about where the challenges are and what the problems are. And pretty unanimously, with those 8 dairy farmers that would easily have paid in levy mine and Isaac and probably another person's salary, so fairly big players, that it was all people related. It was all about managing themselves, managing their teams of people that then effectively managed their business. So we started the program very ad hoc wise. Originally it was called the Large Litres Club, which I'm brutally honest is probably not the greatest name for a group, which very, very quickly morphed into to AgriLeader, which was obviously focused on dairy farmers, and it was the leadership and management element that we were trying to deliver. And we slowly grew that program from those 8 farmers to about 2,000 farmers, using various segmentation methods to identify. At that time, when Isaac started, there was probably around 15,000 dairy farmers in the UK. When I joined, sort of halfway through the program, we were down to about 10,000. It's now in the sort of 8,000 region. We used some of the data we had on our customer records, and we did a bit of research to actually try and segment and identify said dairy farmers that would engage, and the early adopters that would engage with this. Fast forward that on to 2018, where we had our leadership team at AHDB saying, you're doing some really good stuff and getting some really good feedback. Why are you just delivering it to dairy farmers? And I said, well, because my original role was I sat in the dairy extension team. I focused on the south of the UK, and I looked after the bigger guys to push it. And he said, well, you're not talking soil and ploughs and cows. You're talking people. So why are we not offering this to all farmers? So that's where AgriLeader was born, and we flipped from dairy to AgriLeader, and we came together. Being like you guys probably are, as an extension service, we're an evidence-based independent organisation. We're completely impartial. And we actually haven't got any evidence or research that backs up what we're doing other than the results. As an organisation that is evidence is at the core, we probably need to do some. So we commissioned a research report, which is called Bridging the Gap 2030. And what we wanted to understand is what were the leadership and management traits and needs of UK agriculture over the next 10 years. We started that in 2019. It was published in 2020. And from that report, we identified that only 0.37% of the industry in 2019-2020 were actually engaging in any form of leadership and management development, which is quite a small, very, very less than 0.5% of UK farmers were, and this was at the time there was about 250,000 farmers in the UK, so there's not many of them that were engaging with leadership and management. So that was the first big flag. And the second thing we tried to understand is what traits would these individuals need to be better leaders and managers to overcome what we would call the mega trends. So the mega trends being disruptive digitalisation and technology. The world now, you can't breathe without someone capturing some data about you. So there's so much data out there, and particularly in agriculture with sensors on animals, or whether that be crop sensors, or whether that be reports and whatever it is. There's so much information out there that it becomes more disruptive than it becomes useful. We've then got global populations continuing to grow. Land mass isn't. So obviously we're going to need to produce more food to feed more people. So that's one of the big challenges, particularly in the UK, as we've Brexited and we've left Europe. Our support packages and our subsidy schemes, and even more so currently in the political climate that we're in. We won't go into politics because that is a complete interesting scenario that we're in. But farmers have had their subsidies reduced. We used to have something called the basic payment scheme, which came out of when we were in the EU pot. That's been slowly declined over the last 5 years. The new government that's joined have completely scrapped it and stopped it, which about 70% of UK farms were reliant on that payment to make any kind of make a break even, if not make a profit. So they're stopping, and which is causing huge amounts of problems. We've then got the social change. Gen Z, opposed to the baby boomers, have very, very different opinions on food and stuff like that. So we need to how we work and interpret that as farmers. Then you get to the internet, fact or fake. There's so much information out there. What do you believe and what you don't believe? And then the final mega trend would be the environmental and ecological footprint of how agriculture is not only the solution, it's a bit of a problem, but how do we reduce carbon footprints, sequester more carbon, and reduce overall CO2. So there's massive challenges out there that we want.
So Mark, a lot of you...
Go for it.
Yeah, I before we go too far, because I want to go back and check in on a couple of things. But so one of the goals though is to inform your leaders on these mega trends and what they mean for them and how they might manage around them. I was in Cornwall, England last April.
Did you just want to talk about that?
Yeah. No, I'm just going to say it's just about Brexit. So a lot of the Cornish farmers voted for Brexit with the promise that the supports would stay the same as what they enjoyed under the European Union, and it quite quickly dropped to about a third. So Cornwall is not a rich place to begin with, and now it's really hurting. But I want to go back to the structure of your agency. So farmers pay a levy, and in Canada we have a lot of these commodity associations, and they're not lumped together necessarily the way yours is, but they pay a voluntary levy, which means that they pay it and then they can opt out. But your farmers can't opt out. So you were wanting to service your leaders, your bigger farmers who are pushing back and saying exactly what you said. We don't feel like we're getting value for our money, and we're paying quite large levies. So why did you feel like you needed to, when they couldn't pull, they were stuck in there. Maybe that's not the right word. They couldn't ask for their levy back, and yet there's such a small percentage of all of the farmers. Why did you feel like you needed to serve them?
So yeah, it's a compulsory levy, and they can't get out of it unless we strike a ballot, which we won't go into that. But they're still levy payers, and they're individuals that were paying a fair proportion of the levy. They didn't object to the work that we were doing. Where they were objecting is that it wasn't meeting any of their needs. So that's where we started to segment the demographic of farmers and starting to target and tailor the resource to them, and we needed to have an understanding of what their challenges were, which ended up being this more people, leadership, and management centric.
Which exactly what I'm glad we said that, because I feel like our associations don't necessarily segment their membership in that way. They're serving the masses, but you identified groups and specific needs for each group.
I also think that there's a really interesting narrative here about how there are some associations in Canada that have been able to make their levy compulsory or mandatory, and there's an argument against it, saying that, well, if it's not voluntary, then there's no accountability for those associations to actually service their members. Like that, all of that's built into kind of that voluntary nature. But what you're saying is really interesting. Is you do have it as compulsory, and yet you still feel that strong commitment to service your members. And I think that's a really good thing to have out there. That's a great. I'm glad that's been said.
And did you segment them by size, or did you ask them what services they wanted and segment that way?
Yeah, so admittedly I wasn't around when the original segmentation was done, but yes, originally it was very crude in terms of size, and it was dairy, it was number of animals, and then we did a bit of work in terms of their how they would describe themselves, whether they're an early adopter or whether they're a laggard, and tried to then focus on the early adopters that were more proactive and more engaged to then start the ball rolling. We would love, without spending thousands and thousands of pounds of levy, we would love to do that for all levy payers. We'd love to be able to deliver sort of personalised, like your social media in this day and age, with the algorithms. Suddenly you start clicking on cows eating grass, and before you know it, your feed's full of that stuff. That we would love to get to that point where we can actually provide a very individualised service to each business in the country, which we'll continue working towards.
Is there a belief, or is there evidence to support the idea that if you target your large operators who are early adopters, that knowledge will trickle down through the whole industry? Is that the thinking?
Yeah,
and is that true?
They create that vacuum, definitely,
Hmm.
and bring people along with them. Definitely.
Yeah, because we would certainly have examples of that here, or at least we'd have some. We could probably, Jay and I could probably name some of the big operators that would be great to target for that kind of programming. That's very interesting. So do you do a little bit of like media training and all this? You mentioned like social media and like navigating all that stuff. Is that kind of a part of the program?
We do offer to some of our farmers media training. We've had a little bit as well, but we've been, as the program has evolved, we've been provided quite a bit of a free license to try and make mistakes and try stuff new, which is the only way you learn, which is great. We've done a lot of work as I joined the business around behaviour insights and social sciences. You might have come across Dr. Jolanda Jansen from the Netherlands. She did a massive piece of work around changing behaviour. So rather than providing knowledge, which we all do, is very, very important. It's how do you actually change the behaviour? And her thesis was on reductions of cell counts within the Netherlands. Without going through the whole paper, it was rather than tell people that they need to bed up more regularly and use better disinfectants on teats. They found that they identified that the biggest single factor to reduce cell counts in the country was to get milkers to wear disposable gloves. Problem is the milkers didn't like wearing the disposable gloves. So what they did over leading up to the Christmas period, any advisor, any salesperson, any veterinarian that went on farm just every time left a couple of pairs of gloves continuously. And then the week before Christmas, they had a big advert of St. Nicholas or Santa holding up with white gloves on. It's like, if this guy can wear gloves, I'm sure you can. And the result of the study and the program was basically cell counts dropped and sustainably dropped over the next 9 months just by rather than just telling someone something. It was just that subtle leaving a set of gloves each time whoever went on there, and we've tried to utilise some of her methodologies and her theories, the reset model, which is where you try and not only provide knowledge, but you hit a different button. So whether it's an economic function, whether it's with your peers, whether it's knowledge, whether it's rules and regulations, you try and hit 2 or 3 buttons, whatever you're trying to change, and hopefully you sustain that change.
Jolanda Jensen.
Yeah, Dr. Jolanda.
Have you had Jolanda on your podcast? I was thinking we should talk to her. I love the idea of change the behavior.
Definitely could connect you. She's amazing. I haven't had her on the podcast. No, she's spoken at my conference. She was one of the first people we ever had speak, and she's been in the UK several times and done massive amounts of work with not only us but other organisations. But she's a really. I'm just thinking,
using Santa as your. Santa Claus as your. Even Santa Claus counts his flea beetles before, or assesses the leaf area loss before spraying for flea beetles.
Even just using Santa for everything. It's just like, well, what would Santa do? Yeah, we could have like bracelets or something. Yeah.
But it's trying very different things and new things. We've had previously like a conference that I organise. Conferences, wherever you go, generally there's a nice lunch and there's lots of information. You meet lots of people, and after the conference you forget it all and don't ever use the stuff in the goodie bag. So all we did several years ago is we had one of these, I don't know if you haven't been in Canada, a photo. You go to a wedding or a function, you have a photo booth where you can put a silly hat on and have your photo taken. So we had that for the evening part, the silly bit, but during the day all we gave them was a little whiteboard and said, just detail down the few key take homes and the few commitments you're going to make from attending the conference and what you've learned. So the conference was pre-Christmas that year. It was in early December. In the UK, on the 17th of January, that is the day that every UK Brit, or the majority of them, break their New Year's resolutions. So they all eat too much over the festive period. They sign up to the gym, they buy a bike, they say, I'm going to go running, I'm going to quit drinking alcohol or whatever it is. But the 17th is the day it all falls to pieces, and they give in, and they don't use a gym subscription, or they don't go for a run. So what we did is we sent those photos back to every delegate on the 17th and said, don't follow the trend. How are you getting on with your commitment? And it created a whole raft of stuff that was like, yeah, it's on the office wall, we've done this and we've done that. And it's like, it just brings people back to that element, and it extends the value of the levy spent, because the learning is over a longer period, and it also instigates change within a business. And that's what we're trying to do as AHDB, is unlock the potential of UK agriculture and unlock the potential of those individual farms.
Oh, I love amazing. We need to dig into this a little bit, because I love this. So the little whiteboard, like, I don't know, 1 foot square or something. So they, right on.
Yeah, funnily enough, I've just got
props.
So it was a little whiteboard and a pen with dairy.
Right on.
Oh, I love that. It's a little speech bubble. It's brilliant.
So they wrote down just a few takeaways, and then did they hold that up in the photo booth? So this, and then you sent them back. You sent them their photo on January 17th as a reminder.
Yeah.
So, man.
Like the social media guys, once you've posted the photo, it doesn't just become yours; it becomes the person it is. So we actually we harvested all of the information, and then we just spun it back to them.
Love it.
This is amazing. This is really amazing. So just full disclosure, like, Jay and I are planning an event kind of similar to the kind of conferences you're putting on, but we have a bit of a time crunch. We have about a month to put this together. We've been talking about it for years, but now we have about a month to kind of put this all together, which is crazy. But these kinds of ideas, like what you just said, are, I'm not going to lie. We are going to steal this, and I hope you're okay. We can give you credit and everything, but
yes, but steal away. We're not precious.
Good. Yeah. We can share insights as we go along too. I love the idea that you try a bunch of things, and I think that's really important. And you have shared some of those breakthrough moments, I'm guessing, because these are the things you're citing now. But I'd like to. Are there any kind of other moments where you've tried something brand new, you bring it to an audience, and it's just like it's hit home in ways you didn't expect or got really excited about?
There's several things that we've tried, and just cycling back. So off the back of the megatrends thing, we identified traits that we wanted to actual physical traits within a person to develop under leading self. So things like growth mindset and resilience, leading people. We can't talk about teams in the UK, because if you're a sheep farmer in the UK, they say, I don't have a team, or it's only the dairy. So we changed it to leading people. So that's like inspirational leadership and decision making. And then the third pillar that we'd cover would be leading business. So having that entrepreneurial mindset, and then being detail conscientious. So really getting into the weeds. But so from those dicks, we try and develop content, offerings, activity that sits under three of those pillars. Some of the other successful things that we've done, leading back to the conference again, it's just bringing people from outside of the industry that farmers wouldn't necessarily come directly into contact with, but like I said, are facing the same challenges, but also are a bit of a carrot to get them there, if that makes sense. So we've had one of a good speakers that I've used a number of times is Shemi Alcott. You guys might have heard of her or not. She is probably to date our most successful Olympic skier. We have a show in the UK through the winter months called Ski Sunday. She's one of the presenters on that. She's massive in the BBC. We brought her in just to talk about how she prepared. Her goal was always to win Olympic gold. She never got that far. She had multiple injuries. But she talked about how she prepares for races, how she prepares the Olympics. And we started to look at it, it's like, that's just like being an arable farmer. Weather, wind, conditions, physical condition, and it's just bringing those individuals into the sector to share some other pieces, other things that we've done that have been quite innovative. So the world, unfortunately, is driven now by social media, for good or for bad. In the UK, and like in anything, you have these influencers that have massive, massive reach. And because we have the challenge that the subject that we're talking about, once farmers have engaged with it, they want more and more and more, and they really want to. But getting them to engage with it is always the biggest barrier. So we're like, we need to get a bigger reach than what we're doing on our podcast, on our individual meetings. We're growing the community, but it's not growing as quickly as we'd like it to do. So we had a bit of an idea to bring. There's several UK farming influencers that between them had probably the best part of 2.5 million followers, which from our following was small. So basically, we just brought them all into a room together. We didn't pay them. We just put them up for the night, fed them, and said, "Can we just have a chat about what we're doing? But could you all stream it live on your channels?" And like, yeah, we can do that. That's fine. You're going to pay. That's fine. So we brought these. I think there was 8 of them in the first one. And we brought them into our head office in the Midlands, in the middle of the UK, and just had a chat. And our leadership team got very nervous because there was nothing scripted. We didn't know what they were going to say, and we were going live to the world to talk about what we were doing. So we managed to get buy-in, and they agreed it. And we had 65,000 views within the first 8 hours. And of those views, 60% of them were from the UK, and 60% of that were linked to agriculture. And suddenly, we were starting to tag our resources and our website and trying to track, and everything just started getting used. So we called that the circle of influence originally, a circle of influencers. They don't like being called influencers. It then became the circle and became a platform of trying to get our message out to a wider audience. And engage with farmers that not necessarily were engaged. And one of them, the measurement of success in the south of the UK, where I'm based, I looked after one very, very large dairy farmer who he wasn't objecting of playing the levy. He didn't disagree with what we delivered, but he didn't engage with anything. And I tried and tried and tried and tried. I tried to do personalised stuff for him, everything. Nothing, no engagement. I got a WhatsApp message that night, and one of the influencers was on TikTok, much to my daughter's disgust, seeing her father on TikTok.
I love it.
Other social media platforms are available. But he sent me a WhatsApp saying, "Good TikTok last night, Mark." And I was like, hang on a minute. Let's just take a step back. You're in your mid-50s. You're managing a herd of 3,500 dairy cows, which in the UK is massive. You don't engage with anything we do, but you've made the effort to send me a WhatsApp message saying good TikTok last night with Joe Seals and Ollie Harrison and all the gang. And so we've just tried to build, and then we've built and leveraged on those kind of methods and ways of doing things.
Okay, I just want to paint the scene again for this circle. Who were these 8 people again? Were they all farm or agriculture related? I'm going to say influencers. I know you said they don't like being called that.
They're all farmers, and they're younger, and they've all, from various different reasons, started doing YouTube and TikTok's where you create your following, YouTube's where you monetize it. So these guys are putting content out on a daily basis about the industry. So, being the levy body, we've got a fair chunk of contact details for farmers. I reached out to all of them, picked the phone up, gave them a call, and said, "Would you like to be involved in that?" I said, "I haven't got any budget to pay you, but I can put you up for the night, and I can take you out for dinner. Is about as far as I can go." And they were like, "We'd love to help. We'd love to be involved.
Wow.
We'd love to give."
So were you 8 for 8?
Yeah.
Did they all want to?
Yeah.
Or did you get? Oh, that's a. And so you literally gathered around in a circle in a table, and you said they live streamed. So did they have their own phones in front of them, each of them individually?
Yeah.
And they're just live streaming the event.
And then what we did, so we just had a chat. It was kind of like we're all in a bar and just talking about leadership management and the challenges that the industry is facing. So very informal, very unscripted. Our social media team, social media team at that time was only 2 people. There's 3 of them now, but we then monitored all of the feeds that we were going live on, and we asked for comments and questions, and then we fed those questions in. Again, it was nothing technical. We had a WhatsApp group on my work phone, and Isaac, my colleague's work phone, and we just chucked in questions. So Jay and Toban from Canada have asked, oranges or apples? And then we answered the question. And then we found more people started to join because it was that 2-way kind of thing, but it had a massive reach. It was just something a little bit different to try and get the messages out there and just engage with farmers that we struggle to engage with, which it's not to say that they don't begrudge paying the levy, they just don't engage with the mediums that we would been engaging with, and that's it's probably a challenge that you guys face over in Canada. Is the farmers that probably really need our services and to use our information are the ones that we can't physically get hold of.
And the people who we're taking advice from are often the most engaged people around the board, and they're thinking, no, I don't need that, but you don't realize that the other 90% plus actually need something quite different than what you need. I have a Jay and Toban question for you. We were talking about it before. It's not apples or oranges, but how do you say the word SCONE? The thing you have with tea, with butter and jam.
I'm a scone man, not scone.
There we go. I'm a scone man too.
I said scone earlier. Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's good.
2 against 1. I like it.
But there's a lot of scone. There's a lot of scone people. I was telling Toban that you're not that strange. It's a kind of, I don't know whether it's a 50-50 split, but anyway, we need to talk about the event because we don't have a ton of time left. And so I think you structure the event around your three
pillars,
goals, which is helping the self, helping the people, and helping the business.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you structure that event every year.
So we try and hit each of those pillars with a speaker from outside of the sector. So generally the only agricultural content with the 24-hour period is the delegates in the room. We always run it now over 24 hours, so it's lunchtime to lunchtime, including an overnight stay and dinner. The current deal, which we might look at other models and methods, is the levy will cover the cost of the conference and their evening meal. They need to get themselves there and put themselves up overnight. And probably one of the principal aims is not only to obviously highlight areas and develop skills and knowledge under leading self-leading people and leading the business, but is to really push them out of their comfort zone. So we'll always have the conference in a city centre location. Not to say farmers don't go to city centres, but it just makes it very, very different to what they're used to. And then we try and aim to focus on a theme that will run right the way through the conference to help develop. So it might be change, it might be developing business and things like that. And then once we've established, based on the feedback from the previous years, we'll then try and source people that farmers would, like I said earlier, would have never ever seen before, that are very, very engaging, that are very, very inspirational, but will be able to provide some practical tips for individuals to actually take home and use within their business. Maybe not immediately. It might take them a month. It might take them 6 months to establish that kind of stuff. And it'll be a mixture of keynote, workshop kind of activities with that dinner and that networking piece, which is probably the cream. Isaac will always say you can never underestimate the value of a good piss up. We don't buy the beer. We're not allowed to buy beer. They have to buy their own beer. We're not allowed to spend levy on beer. But some of the magic happens where we bring these like-minded farmers together to share and network off of the farm, away from the farm, to actually immerse themselves in the content.
How many people come?
So we around the 200 mark is where we generally at, and I'm not. if you talk to our chair, we're currently the chair of AHDB, who's in his final term. He's just had it extended because his replacement is currently being appointed. He would say that we need to grow and grow and grow the conference. We'd love to grow it. We always want to keep moving forward, but it's about having the right people in the same room together. So I'm not as precious about numbers. I'm more interested in farmers that are really engaged with this kind of content and really want to push themselves to better lead themselves, better lead their people, and better lead their business.
And can anyone sign up, or do you handpick the invite list?
No, if they're a levy payer, they are more than welcome to join, and I can't be explicit. I'm not. If they're a levy payer, they're in. We don't allow. We want to make it. We don't allow industry. So salespeople and feed reps to attend. We want it to be quite a safe space where there's not a pressure, because essentially some of these farmers are the best farmers in the country. It could be a very easy win to meet several very large farmers and sell quite a lot of feed or chemicals or something like that. So we don't necessarily allow any industry representatives in unless they're levy payers, because we do collect a levy in other sectors. The processing and abattoirs, millers, maltsters pay a levy as well, so they're more than welcome to join. The only way they can attend is if they sponsor a table, which the caveat of sponsoring a table is you need to fill that table with farmers. So it's not just a monetary thing. Monetary thing basically plays for their place at the conference, but the key thing is they bring some more farmers with us. It's a way we can try and grow the network.
That's really interesting. I mean, we're challenged with this. This is all incredibly practical, unusually practical for a podcast episode. I love it. But we're faced with this because Jay and I both work in for these associations that collect levies. So there is that kind of. It's different than like the Bayers and the Cortevas, where there is, it's a bit of an unbiased, farmer-friendly environment. But when we think of training or we think of putting on programs like this, we have various kind of segmentations in mind. One of them is the staff at some of these associations, because their purpose is to serve their levy payers, their farmers. So kind of communications and media training for them. But then we also have opportunities to train like their boards. So like these are farmer boards in management and similar things to what you're talking about. But then we have various others. So research, like Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada researchers. We've actually been asked in some occasions, and there's an interest there in learning how to better extend their research to farmers. And then you're talking about that farmer audience. And I mean, my head goes just in a million different places. Then it's a discussion Jay and I need to have actually literally after this. We're going to talk about programming for this thing we're doing. But I don't know. Like when I do you have any comment on that and kind of a direction, advice?
Just give something a go and try and choose your audience, and just try some new stuff. That's all we've done. Is, like I said, we were as a levy body, we were very lucky that as we were formed AgriLeader, we were given the mandate to just make some mistakes and try some stuff that nobody else would do, and that's what we did. And I've always tried to think outside of the box. So one of the things I want to do this year, I don't know if the same, particularly in dairy farmers, their milk gets collected generally on every other day, and they get a little receipt from the tanker driver that comes and picks the milk up. Well, I want to stick some information on the back of that receipt, where it's a QR code or an image or a cartoon steering them to something like that, because it comes every other day, and they're going to look at something like that, which might get I always aim to get 5 seconds a week of engagement with the farmer, because if I can continually have a positive engagement, then actually they might click on the website or pick the phone up to one of their local extension officers to ask some advice, and it's building that kind of trust. If you're organising a conference, think outside of the industry and just aim for some really, really good speakers. And I've set myself and I have set a pretty high bar in some of the individuals that we've had speak, to name but a few. We've had Brad Waldron, who is a business development consultant in the UK. He generally works with Apple and L'Oreal and charges more than what I have in an annual budget for a day rate. And I just reached out to him and said, this is what we're trying to do. Would you be interested in helping? He's like, I love the concept. I'll quite happily do it. What's your budget? It's like, not as much as you were thinking. And it's like, no, I'm going to have impact on 200 businesses. Of course I can do it. We've had a chap called Jamil Qureshi. Jamil Qureshi is a sports psychologist. He's taken 7 people to world number 1. I think the majority of his work is in the world of golf. He spends his life in a plane travelling the world, and he came and did a full morning session for us 2 years ago, and blew the pants off the farmers, which still today they're using some of their content. So it's having some really, really good speakers, bringing people together in an environment where they're comfortable and safe. And like I said, they don't underestimate the value of a good piss-up scenario.
Yeah.
It's being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's about providing space for networking, providing space for actually allowing that to happen.
For the piss-up, Mark, I just had to say that word.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
So are you, is this just all 200 people, do they all go to the same large room, or do they gather into little groups and head off to pubs?
No, so we tend to put on some kind of formal dinner. And what we've done over the last couple of years, and again, we've got sponsorship because as a levy body, we're not allowed to spend levy on alcohol. So we get some sponsorship to help with the cost of that, and they sponsor the evening drinks and the meal. But 2 years ago, again, it's an overnight conference, and if you're in a hotel or wherever you meet, it can get a little bit claustrophobic, and particularly as a farmer, that I'm very much the same. We're outdoors people. We want to get out a bit, so we try and take them somewhere. So 2 years ago, we were in Manchester, in a fantastic part of Manchester, between the 2 famous football stadiums, Manchester United and Manchester City, and we took them out for dinner at the National Football Museum, which is an absolute funky triangular-shaped building, and we had use of the full resource, and it was literally, we put a 3-course meal on, but that was it. There was no entertainment. It was all about enjoying the evening, having a few drinks if you want to, and doing the same. This year we were in London, which is very close to my home, thankfully, and we hired a penthouse area and hotel, which was actually the cheapest out of all of them, which overlooked the Tower of London and Tower Bridge, so a really iconic part of the city. And again, we put a nice meal on. There was no after-dinner speaker. It was all about connecting with people and chatting and enjoying the evening. And it's not compulsory. If they don't want to come and they want to do their own thing, that's absolutely fine. But we find putting a bit of food on is always a good magnet to getting a good conversation going and some good engagement.
When you talked about farmers coming to London and being out of their comfort zone, of course, I went to Caleb from Clarkson's farm coming into London to sell his wasabi. Yeah. A very uncomfortable scenario for old Caleb there.
Yeah. I think he's getting a lot better of it now as the Series 4 is
he's more of a celebrity.
Seasons 4 is just about to come out in the UK, so there's a lot of bated breath at the end of next month.
Do farmers like Jeremy Clarkson?
I think Jeremy Clarkson's one of those iconic individuals in the UK that you either love him or hate him. We have a product over here called Marmite, which is like Vegemite, and which people either love it or hate it. And he's very much one of those individuals that people either love him or hate him.
Oh yeah.
However, the mood and the opinion of the UK agriculture is that he has done huge amounts of good, just purely his reach, and particularly into the general public and the consumer, in terms of the actual understanding and the truth and the realities behind actual farming. I think the first series for me, his very final episode where he sat down with Cheerful Charlie. We know Cheerful Charlie very, very well. He's a great guy. Where they were just basically going through their figures for the year, and for a 1,000-acre arable unit in Cotswolds, which is a great growing area, which would be a fairly sizable farm in the UK, if we're honest, for him to make £100 for a year's worth of effort, and that included his subsidy payment. It really hit home in terms of the blood, sweat and tears that goes into producing quality food.
I'd like to get Charlie Ireland to come speak at Ag Days in Brandon. In fact, I was on a brainstorming session this week asking for speakers, and I said, let's try to get Charlie Ireland, or Cheerful Charlie, to come to Brandon and talk to us.
I'm sure he'd be up for that. Ceres Rural, who he works for, always sponsor a table at the forum. They always bring farmers.
Oh, right on. Mark, you said the word mistakes, and so you're given some latitude to try things and make mistakes. I was wondering, I mean, I don't necessarily want to end on a low note, but I do. I think we can learn, farmers and anyone in business and anyone in life, we can learn a lot from our mistakes. Like if we were going to try some of these things here in Canada that you're doing there with AHDB, what are some of the mistakes you made that you might want to flag for us?
Little things by trying to do too much and trying to target too wide an audience and too wide people. Isaac, my colleague, will always say to me, halve it and then halve it again. You're being too ambitious and you're trying to think too wide. So one of those things, an example of that is with the growth of social media. We tried to create a closed community, and I suddenly realised the actual hours and sweat and trying to fill a social media channel with content and engage with people and keep it live and real. It just was, in terms of the return on the investment in time for the actual engagement that we were getting back, it wasn't the platform, and that was on a various platform that's based in Silicon Valley. That was something that that closed group, which it's still up on Facebook now, took a lot of time and actually didn't create enough traction. Whereas doing some of the things like we've done with the forum, with the video, with the photograph, or sending, we sent one year, rather than sending an invite via email, we sent everyone a greetings card, so like you get for your birthday. Because farmers are very, very time poor, and you have the iconic kind of vision of a British farmer sat round the kitchen table drinking tea and eating a full English breakfast. Well, hopefully that card will sit on the table for a longer period of time, and then actually they'll engage with it after they've looked at it 6 or 7 times. And actually, I will scan that QR code that's in there, and I will book on to said event. It's try and don't go too broad in some of those kind of scenarios, and just if it's not going right, then just say it's not gone too well.
I love that, because in the notes it says you did that with the birthday card, and then you had a golden ticket in there that said they'd been chosen to attend this conference.
We tried to replicate the good old Roald Dahl's Willy Wonka's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket. It just makes them feel a little bit special until they all got to the conference and realised that they all got a golden ticket.
They've been duped. I love it.
But yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, it's just some of the things. It's just we've tried and suddenly realised that it wasn't going to do, or trying to extend some of these really good speakers and run them across the country in smaller groups. It doesn't often work, and you don't get the numbers of farmers wanting to. Because suddenly, up with today, we work with a glorious sunny day in the UK. We're leading up to Easter. There's a lot of busy people out. Admittedly, we could do with a bit of rain because people have just turned animals out or sowing spring crops, and we had a very dry March, and it could do with a bit of rain. People are busy, and we find in the UK that farmers will commit to our events, but are very quick to not turn up and not necessarily always send their apologies for various reasons. So it's thinking about how you can engage with people in different ways. And like I said, I always think, how can I get 5 seconds of time in that farmer's life every week regularly that's positive, that hopefully the fruits of my investment will then turn into a strong engagement, or they'll turn up to an event, or they'll use one of our tools.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the level of detail and inspired too with how you think about these things, and really try to, like, you're picturing the farmer, sitting having morning tea, eating his or her full breakfast. I think that's great. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Jay, did
Well,
you
my last thought, because we could go on, but we need to wrap up. The 5 seconds of time. I like that as a goal. So there's social media, there's the birthday card, there's the podcast, there's the events. What are the most effective? And I guess this is a podcast unto itself.
That's a huge question. I love it.
But what are the tools you use to get those 5 seconds?
All I would say is, well, we have a big marketing campaign in the UK called We Eat Balanced, and the whole point of that marketing campaign is to promote eating a balanced diet. Admittedly, to have a balanced diet, you need to eat meat and dairy, and various cereals and oilseeds. The way that we think in the AgriLeader team is we need to provide content in a balanced manner in lots of different forms. So when you eat a roast dinner, it has meat and veg, and that's how our content needs to be. So everybody's different. I'm very much, you probably suss me, I'm quite a detail-orientated person. I like getting into the weeds and the nitty-gritty and understand. Whereas Isaac, my colleague, he's not like that at all. We play to our advantages, and he brings a bit more creativity and a bit more out-of-the-box thinking. As well as he's the one that will quite happily stand up in the middle of a room of 200 people and shout his idea. I'm never going to do things like that. So we try and cover, everyone's different and every farmer's different. And if we're wanting to get more engagement, particularly from the AgriLeader program, but even more broadly from all of our content at AHDB, we need to think in very complex layers of different levels of communication, from social media, digital, face-to-face communication, sending something physical, someone being at the auction mart, just chatting to someone. Like, we've sponsored napkins and cups at the auction mart. They all have all go for a cup of tea and a bacon roll. Well, let's stick some of the information on the cup, and then, or inside the cup, so as they drink it, then actually they're engaging with it, and it might go, what the bloody hell's that? So it's lots of different manners. I wouldn't say one's better than the other, but lots of layers to try and get that message across and try and engage with as many different people as possible.
Marcus has been incredible, absolutely incredible. We're gonna have to call our program the Mark Campbell
that's right.
training program. But
yeah, we're not precious, and I've just nicked ideas from other people. So yeah, use and abuse, and we're always willing to fly over. We'll come and give you a hand.
Oh, good.
We'll do a bit of an exchange program.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we should. Well, thanks a lot, Mark. It was great chatting with you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
This was wonderful.
That was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. There was no end, but it was strange, right? Because it's like sometimes it's I could always talk more. I think all of our guests, I could always talk more. But this one was like, I really wanted to get into the weeds on the planning of an event like what he puts on, like the nitty gritty. But I also got the sense that I could email him today and he would send me that itinerary in a detailed form. And then even I'm guessing he'd give me any feedback on anything that we would create. Right. So I think, amazing timing. I got to say that.
What's the thing that of all the things he said that you want to try?
The speech bubble thing. So what couple things. You asked for one. I'm going to give you 10. So I love the idea of like the overnight, like 24-hour period. I've heard, and I feel like this is true, that like that networking time in that first evening is so important for kind of, you don't have to have any programming, but it's so important for like the galvanizing of that information, and then coming back to topics that next morning after you've spent X amount of time with people, I feel like sets things in the brain, especially after an overnight. Your brain is learning while it's sleeping, right? So it's like that's so important.
Well, remember Diljit Brar, our guest from a few weeks ago, was saying that about the importance of those connections. Mm-hmm. So what that evening get together does is enhances those connections. Yeah. So so your wrap up discussions the next morning are just that much more engaged and probably productive because people are wanting to work together towards something.
There's a relationship already kind of structure there. And you think like my most productive hours in the day are the morning hours, right?
Yeah.
So instead of like that first day where you're setting things up, you're spending those formative hours kind of, preparing everybody for what's coming. That next morning, you don't have to do any of that. You can get right into the meat of what you're talking about, whether it's rehashing or it's new information. It's just I think the brain is just so much more prepared to take that on that next morning. So I love that. And it's just like an idea of like the photo booth and that speech bubble and the whole idea of just trying things out.
Yeah.
Like putting a cartoon on the back of a ticket, like a dairy, trucker ticket. I think that's
like if every grain elevator had a little, like as you're getting your weight receipt, maybe you don't get those anymore.
You totally do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having some sort of message from whatever association it was that's taking the levy off of that crop. Yeah. And that's maybe your 5 seconds a week that you want to engage. But
the challenge here now is this is a challenge like for me personally, is there are so many ideas in the world, right? Like, so you have a session like this, and my notes are just full of ideas, right? How after this do you start kind of just choosing to just implement one?
Yeah.
Like you just like, okay, I'm going to try this you
got to half it and then half it again.
Right.
So, but I guess, or what? Yeah. If you have one or two that you want to run with every year. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing for the farm too, I suppose, is you get bombarded with the dozens or if not hundreds of ideas all the time, which ones to implement.
I also really like the idea that it sounds like they took a real hard line on who can attend those events. So I know that's something industry struggled with. Is like they want to keep industry out and keep farmers in, but they've had trouble saying no to people. Yeah. So I got the sense that those lines are pretty hard there.
That event is for farmers, period.
Yeah. And if you're going to come in, you got to sponsor a table, and then you have to fill that table with farmers. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Just to be unapologetic about some of those things is fantastic.
And then the social media influencers volunteering to gather around in a table and just talk for whatever length of time it was.
I think there's so much there to talk about.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyway, fantastic conversation.
Very inspired. Yep. This has been The Extensionists. I'm Jay Whetter.
And I'm Toban Dyck.
Until next time. This has been a Burr Forest Group production. We also want to thank the people you don't see.
We're here, we're chatting away with our guests, but there's tons of people who work behind the scenes to make this podcast happen.
Ryan Sanchi is our director.
Ashley Robinson is the coordinator.
And Abby Wall is our producer and editor.